Hello, Dr. Jerry Ziffer here. And first off, I want to thank you for allowing me to work with you on your weight loss or health related goals. So what I want to do is to cover a number of areas that are going to be of interest to you to help you in your journey. So we're going to talk a little bit about weight loss, but also understand this also has to do with just better health, okay? So first off, I want to start off with some tips. You know, my main weight loss tips start off really with, you need to understand that you need to start from a place of kindness to yourself. And I say that because having directed weight management programs for many years, what I see is people become very incredibly frustrated. You know, it's a challenging process and people can get really down on themselves because ultimately there are a lot of factors that outside of our control that go into maintaining our body weight. And so while there are many things that we can do to address our body weight, it's important to start from a place of compassion and kindness to yourself. And so from that place, we have to start looking at making healthier lifestyle choices and start moving in the direction of a healthier diet, more exercise, better sleep, and other factors that affect weight and our health. Then in many cases, the weight starts off, when we do all those things, the weight starts to take care of itself. I always tell my clients that no two people lose weight at the same rate. Everybody is totally different, and not everybody falls out to the same point. So the end point is different for each person. And then there's the reality that when you get to a point where you've lost weight, and it does become harder to lose more weight, and that's not really anyone's particular fault or lack of willpower. It's just biology. And so it's important to be realistic about where you're going with it, not to be hard on yourself or to feel minimized or to minimize shame that you might feel, you know, if you slip up, because hey, everyone's human. So what I often tell people when they come to me is, especially people who are trying to lose weight, is don't focus on the number on the scale. In fact, when I have people who come to me, I don't even bother checking their body weight because that can actually frustrate people more if it's not going as quickly as they would like, or even if it's going in the wrong direction. And to focus instead on tracking the actual behavioral changes that you're making, which is sometimes, which is something I should say that people are more in control of. You're not necessarily in control of how quickly your weight changes. It does seem to be a very useful strategy because it's important to focus on things that are really tangible with what you're doing. And finally, my last tip is not to rely on willpower. So we know that willpower extinguishes by most people by around 1 p.m. It's not really a good long-term strategy for weight loss to rely on denying yourself and willpower and trying to white knuckle yourself through a dietary plan. But what I think is more important is actually to change your environment. And that's going to include changing the foods that you happen to have in your home. Working with who you're living with to help you strategize and spending time with. Hopefully who will share the same changes with you. Somebody who you can truly partner with. Another thing is changing your routine. For example, if you know you have a habit of walking by a bakery shop or every single day and getting that donut, that's a habit that is a habit that would be better maybe to walk a different path. Just don't go by that place. That way you're not tempted to do that. You're not tempted to go in. Because willpower is difficult because, hey, listen, like I said, we're all human. But it would make it easier on yourself to make better choices. Next thing I want to cover are some myths in the mainstream. There is some advice, I should say, out there in the mainstream about weight loss. And it's really quite dubious. You know, one of the ones that I hear probably the most is about avoiding carbohydrates. Probably the most common one out there. On one hand, I can kind of understand why people feel that way because there are many carbohydrate-rich foods that are just not healthy for us. They're dense in calories, which can lead to an overeating of these calories. And if you eat a lot of them, hey, you're going to gain weight rather than lose. But when you look at what these foods are, they include things that have white flour, crackers, cookies, junk foods, things with added sugars, highly processed foods, desserts, things like that. These are foods that nobody thinks that are good for you, but it's wonderful for you to mostly eliminate those foods from your diet. And that's what people are what they're talking about when they're referencing carbohydrates. Unfortunately, people lump all those foods that contain carbohydrates into one group. So they start thinking, well, that they shouldn't have sweet potatoes or oatmeal or brown rice, or maybe they shouldn't have fruit. This is the most craziest idea, because these are all foods that people eat them as part of their staples in their diet. People eat this way, I should say, tend to have the healthiest body weights overall. And they've never, ever been shown to cause weight gain or even many of the same illnesses that are out there that are caused from those foods, from those bad, or processed carbohydrates. It's really important to separate out those types of carbohydrates. And in fact, I don't even like to use nutrient terms when giving weight loss advice or any health-related advice and wellness advice, because then it can be very confusing for people when you're talking about carbs, proteins, fats. I'd rather talk about foods themselves that are beneficial. So a healthy carbohydrate-rich diet that would include lots of fruits, veggies, beans, grains, legumes, things like that, which are all really healthy, and they can promote healthy body weight. These are the foods that should not be avoided at any cost. Some other weight loss advice that I have heard, which I think really require correction, is about protein. People think that the more protein that they consume, the more muscle they're going to gain and the leaner and fit they're going to be. That's also a myth, and that persists to this day. The reality is that yes, we do need protein, a certain amount that we all need. And if you're athletic, yeah, you're going to need a little bit more. And if you're eating a diet that's low in calories, you're going to have to focus on getting enough protein to make sure that you're getting enough. That said, just eating more protein doesn't mean that you're going to magically turning into a bodybuilder or a lean, fit athlete. And of course, that requires a lot more than just, your diet and protein and all that. So I would say that protein is not something that is necessarily needed to overly focus on, but just make sure that you're getting enough protein for your daily needs. It's also important to make sure that you're getting it from healthy sources, because protein actually, when it comes from animal sources, tends to become more inflammatory, tends to come in with unhealthy nutrients, such as saturated fat, excess heme iron, and other things that can promote chronic disease. Whereas when you get your protein from plant sources, you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to get all the amino acids that you need, along with fiber, phytonutrients, and antioxidants, as well as all the vitamins and minerals that you're going to need. Plant foods are also anti-inflammatory. So that's really my advice around protein. The third piece of weight loss advice, or one of the myths that I hear all the time, is that people say, quote, I can exercise my way out of an unhealthy diet, or just exercise my way to weight loss. Unfortunately, these are the cases when people can exercise tremendously and lose weight if they're not increasing their calorie intake or not matching their exercise needs. But for the majority of people, what the science shows is that exercising is not that helpful for weight loss. Don't get me wrong, it is important and it's great for other reasons, but it doesn't really help people lose weight. It's really much about the diet. As we say, you can't out-train a bad diet. Now, when it comes to not regaining the weight back, in other words, maintaining that healthy weight loss, then yes, exercise definitely does play a bigger role. So it's important to get the exercise mode started early in the process, so you'll continue with it, and it'll help you defend your new body weight. A big issue that I've seen in my work is when I'm working with professional athletes. Many of these were high-level athletes who were extremely fit and muscular, but they never worried about what they ate because, hey, they worked out for so many hours in a day. Unfortunately, because they never learned proper eating habits, once they stopped their exercise, which was more for performance rather than health, they ended up gaining an extreme amount of weight back. Now, when it comes to not regaining the weight back, in other words, maintaining a healthy weight loss, then exercise, yes, plays a great role. And so it's great to get into the exercise mode, have it early, to learn proper routines, along with a way that, as I said, it will defend the results that you have already obtained. But understand, no one single factor is going to determine the amount of weight you lose. I want to bring up something that is referred to as the obesogenic environment, which is what we're in today. We live in an obesogenic environment, which refers to the current modern day context that we live in which the foods that we have are readily available. They're more convenient for us, ones that we are biologically driven to crave. They're all around us. These are the ultra-processed foods. Foods that contain a lot of additives that are just not naturally found in nature. And they're engineered to be, hey, they taste great, and they keep people wanting to come back for more and consume them. In fact, portion sizes have increased in most restaurants and in takeout. The fact that sugary beverages also are everywhere. It makes it really hard, if you think about it, to make the choice to eat a healthy diet. I mean, it's an upstream battle for most people. So this is why it's not one individual's fault, especially when they're struggling with their eating habits. It's really about a societal issue. This is why it's important to look at your own home environment with your family, your friends, who are really your social support. They can help you gear more toward a healthful diet. Build a routine and environment for yourself that's going to promote more eating of healthier foods. Because it is really challenging to make choices in this obesogenic environment without that support. Next thing I want to cover is fad diets. There's a lot of lure in the health and wellness space around carbohydrates again, and the tendency is for people to always lump all carbohydrates into one batch, forgetting that some of the healthiest foods on the planet contain carbohydrates, and they're great for us. The other thing I see is that there's a lot of misconception that there's just one magic bullet. So if I wake up in the morning and drink, say, apple cider vinegar with water every morning, I'm going to get the body weight that I crave. Unfortunately, if it was that easy, a lot of people would do it and be successful. But the reality is it's more about what you do on a day in and day out basis for the long term. And that's another reason why doing things as a quick fix, of which there's a lot out there. And don't get me wrong, you can lose weight very quickly with these, but they tend to be diets that unfortunately they're short term, and people generally tend to regain the weight back because they're just not sustainable. So when we're talking about weight loss, we really need to be talking about something that you can really keep up for the rest of your life. Not trying to get to a specific body weight very quickly, but to maintain it. It's much more about working it into your lifestyle pattern so that can be a natural flow of what you're doing. Therefore, you're going to be more likely to actually keep the weight off. So some of my recommendation dietary changes. So my recommendation for dietary changes for people who are interested in losing weight actually is the same for people who don't want to lose weight. It's the same for people who are healthy and people who are living with chronic disease and want to get healthier. And that's to eat a whole food plant-based diet. Unfortunately, there is really no diet just to lose weight, just for diabetes, just for heart disease, whatever. It's all really the same because our body functions the same. So what that really means is to get rid of and avoiding all the highly processed foods like white flour, added sugars, junk foods, and reducing or get rid of animal products, animal foods. So you're really making your plate focused on foods like fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, non-starchy vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and adding actually some fatty plant foods like avocado. Now, if you're doing some kind of strategy for weight loss, it's a little bit more focused on the non-starchy vegetables and legumes. In fact, one of the strategies that works really well is what I promote is if you take a plate and divide it in half, okay, that one half of the plate should be all non-starchy vegetables. This would include, say, some dark leafy green vegetables, some cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, peppers, things like that. And then you take the other half and you divide the other half of the plate and you divide that into two parts, into quarters. So then a quarter of your plate would be like legumes, tofu, tempeh, some kind of bean or lentil. And then the other quarter of your plate would include whole grains like brown rice or quinoa, barley, things like that. And that balance works really well for people who are trying to lose weight and even manage their weight. And look, if you want some dessert after, no problem. Be a perfect time to add some fresh fruit, say like some berries, or even, how about a frozen banana turned into ice cream? But understand there is no one diet, as I said, for each condition. You know, if you're giving the body what it needs on a regular basis from a nutrient standpoint, the body will function the way it's supposed to, and the results are going to be there. This strategy also is high in fiber. It's very nutrient dense, and it's been associated with just not only weight loss, but more importantly, it shows actually a reduction in chronic disease and increased longevity. Okay? So let me go over plant-based weight loss. So the data is really strong that eating a plant-based diet is associated with a healthier body weight. Also, it's been shown to prevent weight gain over time. There are so many interventional studies out there that show when people adopt a plant-based diet that they can successfully lose weight. And in many cases, they're being told specifically not to count calories, which is really interesting as a feature because that's not what people talk about when they're talking about weight loss programs. They're talking about counting calories. Understand, you can lose weight on any diet. So the question is, why would you choose a plant-based diet? The reason I would recommend it is because really the data is so strong out there that demonstrates more of an overall health promotion. You want to think beyond just the weight loss. You want to think of your overall health. There was a huge landmark study that had that had a large group of women, and they divided them into two groups. And one was asked to follow an average protein diet versus a higher protein diet. And they ended up losing the same amount of weight. But interestingly, those that have the higher level of animal protein diet still had all the same metabolic disarray as when they started, despite having to lose weight. So they put all this work into losing weight, and yet it's negated. There was still the same amount of insulin resistance and inflammation. This is because they were eating an extremely high animal-based diet. This is another reason why I would recommend a plant-based diet, specifically as a strategy, because it not only will help you lose weight, but again, we're talking about it's going to serve you greater in the long term. So how do you transition to a plant-based diet? There are many ways to transition to a plant-based diet, but I think the key to success, is really to first do some planning and research and just educate yourself about a healthy way to eat plant-based so that you're not just diving into it without knowledge. This is a way in which I can help, guide you on that. We know that when people don't plan and then they're in a situation where, say, there's no plant options around, they're going to flounder around and just not know what to do. So planning is really key, and you want to feel good and take good care of your health while you're doing it. So it's good to research a little bit about these healthy strategies and meet with someone like myself, as you're doing, to help guide and coach you through the process. But also I will say that if you're going 100% plant-based, the only supplement really that people are deficient in that they need is a vitamin B12 supplement. You may not feel well, and you may be, under or overeat calories. So planning and research really are really important. Beyond that, you can do this in a number of different ways. I want to make it convenient for you. If you feel you want to go all out, really go all in, just for like say 3 or 4 weeks, and do so, and you're gonna see some health changes, and you're gonna see them pretty quick. It also will speed dial you into this new way of eating. There are other people, for just whatever reason, one reason or another, they need to do a little bit more slowly. Just know that what you need in your circumstances. So an idea might be like, just start off with breakfast for the first week or so, and start building up a repertoire of different types of breakfasts that don't include animal products or highly processed foods. Then you move on to lunch, and then you move on to dinner. Another way people can transition to work is maybe just go one type of food. Maybe it's just to eliminate dairy and substitute another type of non-dairy milk that would work. And getting rid of, get rid of poultry, and then fish, and then eggs. Okay, so maybe take one animal product at a time off, and transitioning or finding some type of substitute for that animal product. And that can lead to success. Also, one idea would be to start off and have maybe even just to have smaller portions of your animal product. Add one new vegetable. It has to be something that's realistic and attainable, but the idea is hopefully not to go too slow, because then it's easy to transition back to a less healthier diet, which is one that you're just more accustomed to, so you may go back to that. Think of an alcoholic. If an alcoholic was, say, drinking 2 6-packs of beer a day, would you tell that person to transition only 1 6-pack a day? Or somebody who's smoking, say, 2 packs of cigarettes a day, you wouldn't tell them to eliminate 1 cigarette a day. It just makes the process more difficult. So you want to do it as easy, but also go with your gut on it too. Now, a lot of people talk about calories, especially with weight loss. It's important to be mindful of the density of calories of your foods that you're eating, which what I mean is to look for foods like whole fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, sweet potatoes. These are foods that tend to be less calorie dense than especially animal foods or animal products or the highly processed foods. These are the ones that pack a lot of calories into a small space. These may also include white flour, sugars. They also have lower levels of fiber, and they're also less dense in nutrients than even healthy foods, which are higher calorie, like nuts and seeds, avocados, which are the highest calorie dense food, which is oil. I don't know if you realize that. Oil is the most calorie dense food out there. And you know what's next? Cheese, dairy. So you want to stick with the nutrient dense versus calorie dense. So it's important to be mindful of that, because they usually don't make you feel full, and yet they contribute a lot of calories to your daily intake. So from a practical standpoint, it's better to build your plate around the veggies, fruits, whole grains, beans, but also if you do choose a dressing or sauce, be mindful of how much you're putting on. And if you're not melting the weight loss goal or meeting your weight loss goals, just think about how many calorie dense foods that you have in your diet and make adjustments accordingly. And that's where I can help you. Also, a thing that people don't talk about is be careful of your liquid calories. This is really critical for people who want to lose weight. So become mindful of the calories that you're putting into your body from liquid form. So that would include any kind of sweetened drinks, or say 100% juice. It's basically pouring fructose into your body, which can have an effect on your liver and cause diabetes risk. Even some foods like smoothies, they're great. I love smoothies, and especially if you're using them as a replacement food. But some smoothies can be very high in calories depending on what you put in them. So just be mindful of what you're putting in and how you're losing those calories. As in your liquid calories, also, if you make sure you get low sodium options. Next part I want to cover is oils, avoiding oils and sugars. Now, you can Google cooking oil-free, and there are options on roasting, sautéing with vegetable broth, air fryers, And once you get into the habit of cooking without those, most people get used to it and don't even really miss it much. There's a real this I think is a really important strategy, especially if you're adopting a plant-based diet and especially if you're attempting to lose weight, because this is an area that can have a lot of hidden calories. Now, when it comes to sugars are added all the time in everything in every place. They're hidden in breads and sauces, and they're all over the place. So the first place you should look actually is in your beverages, because companies really like to pack a lot of added sugars in them. And so try to get into the habit of getting those out of your routine. Another thing also is be careful, is don't turn to the non-nutritive sweetener. The sweeteners that are touted as 0 calories. There is evidence that they do affect in a negative way our gut bacteria, and they move things more in a negative direction. But more realistically, what they do is they keep you craving sweets, because many of these taste hundreds of times sweeter than sugar itself. So it's probably just better to break yourself cold of the habit of drinking anything with added sugars, or again, even the artificial sweeteners. And once you stop eating like that, you're going to find that you're going to gain some sweetness in things like fruits such as mango or kiwi. Love that stuff. Next one you want to avoid is salt. Salt is really important to think about, because even if you have normal blood pressure, if you have a high sodium diet, chances are it's going to raise your risk for high blood pressure later in life. So you're not immune to getting high blood pressure just because you're not having high blood pressure now and you're eating salt, but you still don't want to make those. You still don't want to take that chance on what may happen in the future. It's something that we just have to be careful of. Most of it comes, though, in processed foods. There's a lot of sodium in typical breads. There's high sodium in sauces and a lot of prepared foods. So when you're cooking at home, you have to be much more in control of how much salt you're adding. So if you buy foods that are less processed, they don't have the added salt, which is actually even a better plus. But if you do buy foods like sauces, try getting the low sodium varieties. The next thing I want to do is to cover some meal recommendations. An example of a meal that would be great for weight loss would be basically structuring your meal around the plate like I mentioned before. Half the plate would be non-starchy vegetables, and the more colors the better. Start with your leafy green vegetables, then cauliflower, broccoli, peppers, and again, mixing as many different colors as possible on that non-starchy part of the plate. Then you might have some lentils, which are high in protein and fiber and phytonutrients. That can fill up a quarter of the plate. And then a quarter of the plate being something like quinoa. Hey, listen, I love quinoa. It's delicious. It's high in fiber and it's got a lot of nutrients to it. So this ratio of food really lends itself to achieving a healthier body weight because it's less dense in calories as opposed to, say, filling up the plate with just grains and beans. It's important to stay within that ratio. That protein-fat-carb ratio is very, very important. Now, if you finish that whole plate and you still feel hungry, just wait maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. And if you're still hungry, have a little bit more of the non-starchy vegetables and maybe some beans in that order. It's important to make sure that you're satisfied. Key in on you're satisfied rather than being full. And of course, have a glass of water on the side. Will avoid those liquid calories. With this, people say they don't like water. If you like cinnamon, take some cinnamon extract and put some of that in there. Your water tastes like cinnamon. Or add some fruit, okay, which add a little bit more flavor to that. And again, for dessert, have some organic fruit like berries or bananas. Now, another thing I want to cover, I think is really to cover just briefly here is especially if you're talking from a health standpoint, is talking to your doctor. So not all Western medical physicians are on board, but mostly because they're just not educated as to the nutritional background. But as a lifestyle medicine coach, I can address many of your health conditions and I can make certain recommendations. Western medicine may be utilized as an adjunct. This is what lifestyle medicine is all about, but it's also important to make sure that you communicate with your physician that you're on a more plant-based diet and have been reducing or eliminating meat. If you need to speak to your physician, it's important to have the information to give them if they're not familiar with a plant-based diet, and to demonstrate the benefits of what it can have on your health. This will be something that you can go over the basics of a plant-based diet, so they're going to understand. And also be aware that physicians are not going to use Western medicine to manage, they're going to use Western medicine to manage symptoms of a disease where you have to ask yourself, do I want to manage this by taking a medication that I'm going to have to be on for the rest of my life? Or knowing that you're going to, or knowing that you're going to be more plant-based. The doctor, knowing this, can also monitor your progress accordingly. It helps to put a bridge there for them to help understand a little bit more about why you're choosing this pattern. You can also tell the physician that you're working with a lifestyle medicine coach who is like myself, who's helping guide you to make sure that you're getting the proper nutrients and that you're meeting your body's nutritional needs. Okay, and it's something you've researched and really believe in and want to continue with. Hey, listen, have some blood work done. And let the doctor know that you'd like to maybe have another blood work done in 2 or 3 months and just see if there's any changes in your blood work. That way that the doctor can see firsthand the benefits. So it's important, again, to have the doctor on board with you, even if they don't understand it. It's important that they partner with you, again, because if you're taking medications, because they may have to adjust your medication, especially once you've changed your eating habits. Your blood pressure is going to go down. Your blood sugar is going to go down, or even be more stable. So it's a really good idea to make sure that your doctor does partner with you. And the very last thing I want to cover is then, and thank you for being here, is weight loss, other weight loss factors. There are so many factors that contribute to your body weight. And it's not just the food that we eat. It's how much we exercise. It's our genetics, which can play a big role as far as your metabolism. It's our microbiome, which is the type of gut bacteria that we have. It's your mood, it's your stress. Are you depressed? Do you have anxiety? Are you sleeping? Are you drinking alcohol? Are you smoking? Do you have any other bad habits, unhealthy habits? Those are all going to play into a role, and those are areas that I'm going to help guide you on. It's also important to really understand that sleep deprived or fragmented sleep can also lead to making different choices. Our appetites become different. So it's never any one individual person's fault if they're struggling with overweight or obesity, as there's so many things that can play a role. And that's why it's important to have compassion for yourself and for other people. So again, I'm here to be that accountability partner, coach, person, and direction coach for you. And like anything else, this is really important that you do stay in touch with me on a regular basis. Unfortunately, especially when you're possibly having some questions or difficulties, you may not have the answers, and it could lead to frustration, which can really make it easy to slip back into some of those bad habits. But staying in touch with me and communicating with me, especially during those times, I can help ease your way back and help you connect, and to hopefully continue making the better, more helpful choices. So on that, again, I thank you so much for being here and allowing me to coach you and work with you. And I am here to help guide you. And if I don't have the answer, I don't have all the answers. But if I don't have the answers, I will find them for you. I will help you in every way possible. So I appreciate you so much allowing me to work with you. And I look to communicating with you more in the future. Thank you so much, everybody.